live in Sydney, Australia. This happened when I was 15 years old and completely home alone. It was around 9 p.m. when I stepped out of the bathroom and heard my front gate swing open. My dog immediately began barking. Across the hallway, I saw someone run past the porch window and disappear into my backyard. I could only make out his silhouette. He was hunched over, unnaturally thin, with sickly pale skin. He wore all black and long messy hair hung over his face. I walked into the living room. My dog stood at the front door, growling. Since I never saw the man leave, that meant he was still somewhere behind my house. After several seconds, another man stepped onto my porch. He looked completely normal. He walked up to the security bars and said, "Hey, have you seen my friend?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I think he ran into my backyard." He nodded. "Okay, I've been following this random guy all night. I think he's on drugs and might be dangerous." That didn't make sense. Why call him a random guy when he had just called him his friend? He turned and walked into the darkness toward my yard. I waited. 2 minutes later, he returned. But this time, he wasn't alone. The pale man stood beside him, pacing back and forth like an animal. The normal-looking man said, "Sorry about that. I just found him. He's really nervous. He'd feel better if you unlocked the door and came outside, just so he can see you're harmless." My chest tightened. The pale man stopped pacing. He stared directly into my eyes, completely still. I stepped forward to shut the door. That's when the second man lunged, shoving his hand violently through the bars toward my face. I screamed, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My parents called the police. When officers arrived, both men were gone. Police told me there had been a break-in less than an hour earlier, just down the street. They were never found. What terrifies me isn't that they tried to break in, it's that they wanted me to open the door myself. It was a Thursday night. My mom was working a late shift at the hospital, and my two brothers were away at college. For the time being, I had the house completely to myself. I had a couple of friends over. We watched a baseball game, had a few beers, and eventually they left through the back door. After they left, I went upstairs to the kitchen to put the remaining beers in the fridge and get ready for bed. I went to sleep shortly after. After lying there for a while, trying to actually fall asleep, I heard light footsteps coming up the stairs outside my bedroom. I assumed my mom was home. I heard her cough as she passed my bedroom door and entered the bathroom. A few moments later, she went back downstairs into the kitchen and started making a lot of noise. Cabinets opening, dishes clanking, the usual late-night sounds. I was way too lazy to get out of bed and ask her to keep it down, so I texted her instead, telling her to stop making so much noise. I put my phone back on my desk, rolled onto my side, and tried to get comfortable again. Then I heard the footsteps coming back upstairs, much faster this time. My bedroom door slowly opened. My mom stepped inside. The hallway light wasn't on, so I couldn't see her face clearly, but I could see her figure standing in the doorway, slightly slouched forward. Annoyed, I said, "Can you stop making so much damn noise?" She didn't respond. I sat up and said louder, "Mom?" That's when my phone vibrated on the desk. Since it was late, I instinctively checked it. The message was from my mom. It read, "I'm still at work." I dropped my phone onto the bed and looked back up at the doorway. The person standing there was not my mother. Even though panic flooded my body, I knew I had to think fast. I tried to play dumb, to act like I didn't realize someone had broken into the house. I said, "Mom, I need to get some sleep. Get out." The figure didn't move. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and texted my mom again, telling her there was someone inside the house, that I had mistaken them for her, and that she needed to call the police immediately. She replied with a single word, "Okay." A few seconds later, something broke the silence in my room. A woman's voice. It sounded crackly, rough, strained. She kept repeating the same words over and over. "I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go." Her voice grew louder as I realized she was moving closer to my bed. I screamed, "Get back." As I fumbled for the lamp beside me, the light snapped on. Standing inches away was an old woman. Her hair was thin, white, and wiry. Her face was deeply wrinkled. Her hands were stretched toward me as she slowly advanced, repeating again and again, "I don't know where to go." I screamed for her to get away as it looked like she was about to attack me. I jumped off the bed, ran out of the room, and slammed the door shut behind me. Seconds later, she began trying to force it open. I threw my entire weight against the door to keep it closed. She started screaming, "I need to get out!" She banged violently against the door over and over. She didn't stop. Minutes felt like hours. My mom kept calling my phone, but I couldn't let go of the door to answer it. It wasn't until I heard loud knocking at the front door that I finally moved. "Police!" I ran from my room toward them. The old woman immediately chased after me. As I opened the front door and screamed for the officers to stop her, they rushed forward and pinned her against the wall. She was handcuffed and placed into the back of a police car. I told them everything that had happened. Based on her behavior and what I described, they told me she would need to be identified and evaluated to determine if she was mentally ill. Later, I found out that she was. After the police left, my mom and I realized what had happened. When my friends left earlier that night, they had gone out through the back door. I had forgotten to lock it. That was how she had simply walked into my house. Even now, years later, the experience has scarred me. Anytime I hear a noise in my room while trying to sleep, I have to look up and make sure someone isn't standing in the doorway. Before moving on my own to California, I lived in the middle of nowhere, on my dad's ranch in Colorado. It was a massive, beautiful property, but I never liked living somewhere so rural. It was boring, and like that old cartoon Courage the Cowardly Dog used to say, creepy things happen in the middle of nowhere. People had trespassed on our land before. That's why my dad owned 3 different guns. Once, he even had to chase 2 men away with a rifle. What I'm about to tell you happened a few years ago, sometime in mid-June. I was home alone. My parents were on vacation, and my little brother was either out with friends or staying at his girlfriend's house for the night. It was unusually hot for Colorado, so I had all the windows open. I usually stayed up late back then, and around 1 a.m., I was still in the living room watching TV. That's when I noticed the motion-sensing patio light turn on outside. That light only activated with heavy movement, something a person would cause. Immediately, I assumed it was my brother coming home. Just to be safe, I got up and looked out the window. I didn't see anyone. I called my brother. He didn't answer, so I sat back down. Then came the knocking at the front door. Our door had a peephole, because anyone who came to our house had to go far out of their way. When I looked through it, there was no one there. I assumed it was Ding Dong Ditch. Maybe local kids. Maybe my brother. I hoped it was my brother. I shut the blinds, suddenly paranoid that someone was watching me. I texted him, "If I find out it's you, I'm not letting you in." Moments later, a knock exploded right behind my head, so loud it made me jump off the couch. It came from the living room window. Then I heard 2 voices at the same time. One deep male voice, one high-pitched female voice. Together they said, "We see you." My heart started racing. I convinced myself it had to be my brother and his girlfriend messing with me. Or maybe, I just wanted it to make sense. The knocking didn't stop. It moved to another window, the dining room. From where I stood, I could see 2 figures outside, but I couldn't see their faces. I didn't stay to look. I ran upstairs to my dad's room and grabbed the rifle from beneath his bed. He had shown me exactly where it was kept in case of an emergency. I loaded it and ran back downstairs. When I reached the dining room window, they were gone. With the gun in my hands, I felt confident enough to step outside. I did a quick lap around the house and checked on the cattle. Everything seemed normal. I went back inside, locked every door, and went to bed upstairs. About 30 minutes later, peace was shattered. Someone was violently pounding on the front door. A man was screaming at the top of his lungs. Not words, just screaming. I grabbed the rifle, ran to the living room window, pushed it open, and fired several shots into the darkness. The pounding stopped. The screaming stopped. I heard 2 sets of footsteps sprint across the wooden porch. Then, nothing, only crickets. Nothing else happened that night, and nothing ever happened again until I moved out. The next day I learned the truth. It wasn't my brother, and it wasn't his girlfriend. My dad told me he was proud of me for protecting the property, and after that night, I understood exactly why he owned those guns. It was a spring night, and I was home alone. I was on a FaceTime call with my friend Jordan, pacing back and forth in my bedroom. At one point, as I passed my window, I glanced outside, and that's when I saw him. A man standing in the street, completely still, facing my house, facing my window. I looked closer. He wasn't just standing there. He was staring directly up at me. I told Jordan what I was seeing and tried to show her through FaceTime. She said she couldn't see him and told me to call my mom and dad immediately. I hung up with her, but stood by the window for a few more seconds. The man didn't move. Then I stepped away, sat on my bed, and called my mom. I woke her up. It was around midnight. She told me to turn off my lights, close the blinds, and that he would probably go away. So I did exactly that. But after a few minutes, curiosity started eating at me. I lifted the blinds and looked outside again. The man was closer now, standing on the sidewalk directly in front of my house, still staring up at my window. That's when I called the police. The operator asked if he was holding any weapons. I said not that I could tell. She told me to ignore him for now and to call back if he didn't leave within 10 minutes or if he stepped onto my property. She also said a patrol car would pass by my house to scare him off. I hung up and crawled into bed. I called Jordan back and we stayed on FaceTime for about 5 minutes. She told me to check the window again. This time, the man was gone. I stood by the window with the blinds open, waiting for the police car. About 10 minutes later, I saw it pull up in front of my house. The spotlight scanned my yard and the neighboring properties. Then the car drove away. That's when I believed it was over. I finished my call with Jordan and went to bed. About 20 minutes passed. Then I heard a strange sound outside, a creaking, cracking noise. I got up and checked the window. Nothing. I went back to bed. A few minutes later, the sound came again. Louder this time. I looked toward the window from my bed and froze. There was a figure right outside my window. My bedroom was upstairs. Suddenly the noises made sense. He had been climbing up the side of my house. I ran to my other window and screamed for help, over and over, hoping my neighbors would hear. I called 911 again and begged them to send another unit immediately. The man tried to force himself through the opening in the window, but then he stopped. One of my neighbors was outside yelling something. When I looked back at the window, he was gone. My elderly neighbor later told me the man had jumped down and ran off down the street. The police arrived again. I gave them all the information I had. They said they would patrol the area all night. I didn't sleep at all, but I never saw that man again. I was home alone for an entire week when I was still a teenager. That almost never happened. My parents didn't go out much, but one of my mom's wealthy friends paid for them to go on a trip. I was an only child, so the house was completely mine. We lived in Newark, Ohio, in a place called Licking County. Yeah, that was actually the name. Our house sat on a quiet road where only a few cars passed each day. Behind it were thick woods, deep woods. We had a large deck overlooking them, a fish pond, and an above-ground swimming pool. This happened on a Thursday night in July of 2013. I remember because I had been texting friends about weekend plans earlier that day. That night, I was sitting alone on the deck, smoking weed, music playing through a speaker beside me. That's when it started. I thought I heard a voice coming from the woods. I turned the music down and listened. Nothing. So I turned the music back up. A few seconds later, I heard it again. This time, I shut the music off completely. The voice came from the trees, a man's voice, calm, distant. "Hey, over here." The woods were only about 20 or 30 yards away. I didn't think much of it at first. I assumed it was kids messing around, maybe playing a game in the dark. Then the voice spoke again. "Hey, over here, we need help." That's when my stomach tightened. The voice was too deep to be a kid's. And when someone says we need help, that gets your attention. I started to feel uneasy. Then the voice yelled again, "Straight in front of you, please, come help us." Now I knew it was directed at me. I hesitated, then called back, "Who is that?" The voice replied instantly, "We just need help. We're stuck in the woods." I asked what that meant. The voice only said, "Please, come here, straight in front of you." I stood up, walked down the deck stairs, and stepped onto the grass. As I moved toward the trees, I called out, "I'm coming, where are you?" The response came immediately, too immediately. "Right in front of you, I see you." I froze. Something felt wrong, deep in my gut. I asked, "Are you alone? Or with someone?" No answer. That's when I stopped walking. I slowly backed away toward the house. I didn't even want to turn my back on the woods. It finally hit me how suspicious the whole thing was. If they could see me, how were they stuck? When I reached the deck, the voice went silent. Completely. If it was real, they would have yelled again, at least asked where I was going. But they didn't. I went inside and locked every door. I sat on the couch for a while, still high, and trying to calm myself down. Then I heard the voice again, closer, much closer. It wasn't coming from the woods anymore. It was in my backyard. I heard splashing water, from the pool or the pond. I rushed to the window. At first I saw nothing. Then the voice laughed and said, "I see you." I spotted him, at least one man, crouched behind the pool. I could only see his head, dark hair, medium length. I slammed the blinds shut. I hoped he'd lose interest, that he'd leave if I didn't react. But then, violent pounding exploded against the window. The glass shook. On the other side he screamed, "Help! Help me!" While laughing, I screamed back that the police were coming. Over and over, trying to sound crazier than him. His laughter slowly faded, until there was nothing. I sat on the couch, shaking, barely breathing. Eventually the night went quiet. He never came back. But ever since that night, I've been extremely careful about who I open my door to. I'm 23 years old and I still live at home with my parents. One afternoon, both of them were gone. I was outside in the front yard, shooting hoops by myself. At some point, I looked up at one of our upstairs windows, and that's when I saw her, a woman standing inside my house, watching me. She wasn't my mom. She wasn't my sister. She was a complete stranger. The moment she noticed me staring at her, she stepped away from the window. I ran inside immediately. I checked the upstairs, every bedroom, the bathroom, every closet, nothing. Then I checked the downstairs, the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, even the spare bedroom, still nothing. Finally, I went down into the basement. It was small. A couple couches, a bar, 2 closets, not many places for someone to hide. When I opened the last closet door, my heart was pounding. This was the final unchecked spot in the entire house. I ripped the door open fast, like tearing off a bandage. I lunged inside, just in case she was hiding there. But all I hit were coats and empty hangers. I was completely confused. I knew what I had seen. This wasn't something you imagine. I went back upstairs and screamed as loud as I could, telling whoever was in my house to get the hell out. I screamed so loud that my next-door neighbor came over. I told him everything, about the woman, about the window. He helped me search again. We found nothing. The only explanation was that she had slipped out the back door, the same door I'd left unlocked earlier. After he left, I locked every door in the house. I called my parents and told them the whole story. Nothing appeared stolen. That night, I checked the house one more time before going to bed. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind wouldn't stop racing. Seeing a stranger inside your home is not something you forget. Hours later, as I was finally drifting off, I heard movement beside me. I had a fan running, so the room wasn't silent. At first, I tried to ignore it. Then the sounds became human. I turned to my other side, and there she was, crawling out from underneath my bed. She slowly stood up, towering over me. I screamed louder than I ever had before. I jumped out of bed and tackled her to the floor. My hand was around her throat as I demanded to know who she was. That's when my doorbell rang. My neighbor again. I dragged the woman toward the front door as she clawed and fought me. I still have 2 scars on my right arm from her nails. My neighbor helped restrain her while I called the police. She screamed the entire time, cursing, threatening us. She looked completely deranged. When the police arrived, one officer recognized her immediately. They had dealt with her many times before. Her name was Karen. Watching her get placed into the back of the police car was strangely satisfying. That night, my mind still raced. I was terrified, but beneath the fear, there was an unsettling feeling I couldn't explain. Relief.